That familiar feeling of seeing your club fail over and over again, with misstep after misstep and yet another controversy or division amongst the playing staff. Who can relate here? Hey, I'm Adrian and welcome back again for another video surrounding Benfica and the seemingly never-ending cycle of, well, it's not really controversy this time, just a failure to meet expectations and further dissension within the ranks of the squad. We'll break it all down and get some opinions from none other than Cristiano Oliveira from the Benfica podcast as well. I've linked to them below if anyone is looking for a great Benfica podcast, in English, by the way. And if you want to watch Benfica, Porto, or any of the other Portuguese clubs in English, then our sponsors for this video, Fanatis, are here to help. I'm going to be watching Benfica away to Porto through my fingers today, and also through Fanatis, who offer the cheapest way to catch Goal TV. And, in turn, Liga Portugal, as with the 50% off deal for Fanatis, you can watch Liga Portugal, all of Liga 1, all of Brasileirão, Liga Argentina, beIN Sports, and more for just $4 per month. That's less than $100 per year for a ton of football. They also have great features like 72-hour video on demand, meaning that if you miss kickoff, you have 3 days to catch up. And you can watch on any streaming platform of your choice. Your computer, smart TV, tablet, Fire Stick, Chromecast, you name it, you can do it. So use the link below to sign up and help out an independent channel like mine while helping yourself to some great football. All right, let's get going. Jorge Jesus left a lasting impression on Benfiquistas following his first stint with the club, some for better and others for worse. He helped bring FC Porto's reign over the Portuguese league to an end, that team that was, commandeered by the likes of André Villas-Boas and Vitor Pereira, that boasts talents like Falcao, James Rodriguez, and Hulk at one time. Jorge Jesus, or JJ as you'll hear him be referred to throughout this video, navigated the tricky waters for Benfica. While his stint wasn't perfect, it made Benfica competitive again in Portugal, very competitive. How he left the club was poor and is the main reason as to why so many Benfiquistas feel like he sort of held the club at ransom before ultimately leaving Benfica for Sporting. You do that and people naturally will be upset, and rightfully so. But jog time forward a few years and Benfica is back to a place of desperation. After the squad and, well, what felt like the entire administration had thrown Bruno Lage under the bus, they turned to Jorge Jesus again. Why? It could have been in part due to former president Luís Filipe Vieira wanting to gather some votes, or it could have been down to the fact that at the time, Jorge Jesus was doing amazing things in Brazil. Under his guidance, Flamengo were pulled out of a very rough spot, went on to win domestic titles, but more impressively, went on to win the Copa Libertadores. Jesus was a continental champion at that point, so bringing him back to Benfica may have been beneficial politically for Luís Filipe Vieira, who had increasingly more and more heat on him from Benfica socios, yes, but at that time, it also felt like a good move competitively. With the benefit of hindsight, we can now confirm that it wasn't a good move, even if Benfica spent a ton of money on transfers. During the summer of 2020, aka the first summer of the pandemic, in 1.5 seasons, which has been the average lifespan of our last two managers at this point, JJ didn't win a single trophy, third in the league, out in the round of 32 of Europa, Taça da Liga semi-finalist, lost the final of the Taça de Portugal, oh yeah, and losing to PAOK in the Champions League qualifiers was quite the false start as well. This season has been more of the same, with the one highlight being that Benfica made it out of their Champions League group finally, but Benfica's record against the rivals, as you can see here, was just embarrassing under Jorge Jesus. So Cristiano, I guess the first place to start would be the simplest question really, or maybe not the simplest question of this interview, but do you think that firing JJ in this moment, or allowing him to leave by mutual consent, I should say, in this moment, was the best point of time to do so?
Look, we all knew that things weren't well at Benfica. The players seemed to have tuned them off at some point, and he just wasn't getting to their mindset. He wasn't getting these guys to play the best of their ability. This changed now, heading into a very important game on Thursday against Futebol Clube do Porto. If they were ready to move on from JJ, and I said this on the Benfica podcast a few minutes ago. They should have done it realistically after the Sporting match when Benfica got pretty much slapped around at the Estádio da Luz. I don't know if they didn't do it because they didn't want to be humiliated against their crosstown rival. They didn't want to give them the pleasure of firing the guy after such a terrible performance at home. But I think that would have been the time to do it, or else you just stick it out for the rest of the year. But I think JJ himself was also looking for a way out because of all the rumors with stuff going on in Brazil. And say what you want, he had 6 months left at Benfica, and he's looking at a possible 3 to 4 year deal outside, making a lot more money. The guy had to look out for his best interest. The whole situation was messed up. I'm glad that it's finally over. I'm not sure it would have been the ideal time to make that switch, I should say. I don't think that Rui Costa and management is doing the best possible that they can do to give this team the best possible opportunity to win week in, week out with a coach like Nelson Berizzo. I hope I eat crow, and I love eating crow, Adrian, when I'm wrong and something positive works out. So I hope we're here in June and we're looking back at this and laughing at my statement.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we've got a taste for crow at this point. We're hoping we're wrong. But let's go back on what we were talking about JJ coming back in, because, I was like you. I was quite excited by JJ's return to Benfica. What he'd done previously for the club, despite the way in which he left and then going to Sporting, how he was fresh off of that sort of revolutionary season with Flamengo, winning the league, winning Copa Libertadores. It seemed like we were going to get an improved version of JJ. That's what it felt like prior to him signing back with Benfica. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your mindset at that time, what your sort of expectations were?
We thought Benfica was being run by the inmates. And so we figured at some point Benfica was going to have to turn these things around and bring in a coach who was going to punch the table and tell Luis Felipe Vieira that we need reinforcements. We need to change the culture in the locker room. We need major change. And that was never to be. Whether JJ was promised that he was going to be able to have the final decision on the roster or not, but all we've seen is it didn't mesh well together. And right from the start, when Benfica lost that game against PAOK in order to qualify for the Champions League, it's just the negativity. The fans never really forgave JJ for going cross down to Sporting. But I thought the guy had pretty successful resume. He had gone to Brazil, wiped the floor with everybody. I mean, Adrian, the guy had more trophies than he had defeats. We saw that his approach to the media, the way he talked about his opponents and stuff, it seemed like the guy gained a little respect for the opposition. At least he said he learned that while he was out. And we thought we were going to get this new JJ, a guy that was going to be able to adapt to these new players. And obviously, attitudes in players have changed. The old school players, you could kind of, whip them with whip them a little bit and get them, to do what you want. Nowadays, you have to massage ego. So we thought he was more prepared. At least I thought he was more prepared for today's new and age player. And it was never to be, man. And I don't think JJ got everything he wanted from the set. Therefore, he pouted. Therefore, you've seen him a lot of times. I remember coming on the Benfica podcast and screaming like, "Who the hell is this guy? This is not the guy. This is not the guy we hired." Because he was Adrian, you saw it. We all saw it. He just sit on the sidelines with his arms crossed, no hooting and hollering, because that's who we all knew. JJ, the thumbs flying out of his mouth and screaming his hair with that Rod Stewart hair going crazy. And he just sat there kind of like, "Oh, I'm not getting things my way, so therefore, screw this." It just seemed like it wasn't a good fit right from the beginning.
So it sounds like you hold a bit of sympathy for JJ in some ways, because if we look back on it, he comes in. Well, there's two sides to every coin, right? He comes in during the pandemic, but he was given a lot of funding. He didn't have a great record against any of our rivals. He didn't win any trophies. So do you think that, with everything that was going on behind the scenes with Luis Felipe Vieira, etc., do you think that it was just sort of doomed to start and that no coach at this point in time would have found success at Benfica?
I think it was going to be very hard if they don't get the final say, right? At that point, Benfica's roster, to be brutally honest with you, was thin, right? Mm-hmm. And so they had to invest this type of money. Now, I agreed with them investing. I didn't agree with their purchases. I didn't agree, with making Darwin Nunez the Portuguese league record fee transfer, right? Guy from second division. Look, he could turn out to be a fantastic player, and we've seen he's a phenomenal horse. The guy's got strength and power, unlike many players in the Portuguese league and probably other leagues. He's a phenomenal athlete. But as far as a soccer player, when you invest that type of money, you have to come in from day one and guarantee me 25, 30 goals. And that's not what we saw, right? That's the equivalent of Barcelona, Real Madrid shattering a league transfer fee. And for a guy like, basically Real Madrid did it with Hazard, except they weren't setting the league fee. But these teams could afford to do that. Benfica was taking a huge risk, investing that type of money for a guy that wasn't a guarantee. He had his good games. He had his bad games. At one point, he was leading the league in assists. That's not exactly why you spent $25 million on a guy for him to be the next Rui Costa. You realistically thought you were getting the Cavani. After all the Cavani talk throughout the summer, you thought you're getting Cavani light. He's been a lot better this second season, but I think at the time there was a lot of questions surrounding Benfica. I thought that Benfica could have reinforced the outside back positions. We haven't gotten left back in forever, right back in forever. I mean, you could tell me Lázaro came in from Inter. Ultimately, he played right back. And I know you could tell me about Gilberto's 1.5 mil, but none of us expected him to. He's actually playing decent this year. Let's be fair. Yeah. Last year, he was atrocious. But we're talking about investing serious money in a position that has been a significant need on this roster for since Nelson Smith left. And so the roster wasn't well constructed. And then, in my opinion, as you said when you first posed the question, seems like I have some sympathy for JJ. Look, I'm still a JJ fan, even though things didn't work out. I didn't like the way certain things were handled by him and by Benfica, but I'm still a fan. I don't think the guy all of a sudden forgot how to coach overnight. But I think he could have done a better job in getting this team to play. But at least for JJ's sake, I have to be brutally honest. I'm one of the few that believes that COVID did really have an impact on Benfica last year. A lot of people look at that as an excuse. Benfica at one point had like 23 people infected, coaching staff, players at one time. And so it was tough for the coaching staff, for players to adapt. And you saw there was a period there in the second half of the season where the team was able to practice a little bit. Rather than playing 2 games a week, they were playing 1 game a week. And you could see the team improved. And we have all known that when JJ gets on the practice field with his teams, that they gradually play better and they kind of get his ideas. And, JJ could get his team playing good football. But aside from that, the team really never played up to par. They never really played up to expectations. And so, therefore, I give that COVID thing a lot more value than a lot of other people do.
And I think that you're right in saying that, because it's something that we see in certain players taking a really, really long time to recover. Like Paulo Dybala, for example, is one that people point to all the time. Guy was one of the first major cases in Italy, got COVID, and he just had an incredibly slow start. Dusan Vlahovic at Fiorentina, I'm bringing up a lot of Serie A for some reason, but had it. Had an extremely slow start to the season and then exploded in the latter half. So I think you might be onto something, and it's something that a lot of people haven't really mentioned when speaking about Benfica and how they've sort of struggled over that time. Because the squad, like you said, got napalmed in like December or whatever it was of last year. It was bad.
Yep.
But speaking of the squad, with Rui Vitoria, Bruno Lage, and now Jorge Jesus, the sacking of the manager has come with plenty of rumors of a sect of players turning on the manager and thus dividing the dressing room. There were rumors of the Portuguese cartel of players within the squad that hold sway over the dressing room and holds enough power to get a manager sacked. Again, they're rumors, but they seem to come up whenever the results start to go awry for Benfica's manager, and this time was no exception. Once again, Pizzi was at the center of these rumors. I mean, at this point, I'm loath to even call them rumors, as they are so prevalent. As it said, he came for everyone in the Benfica dressing room after their 3-0 loss against FC Porto recently. Perhaps his feelings were justified. They were, actually. But as a captain, perhaps there was a better way of addressing things. Though I'm sure many would disagree after that embarrassing performance. I wanted to scream at everyone as well. But when you break rank and do something like Pizzi did, there is a chance that there will be repercussions for your actions, and indeed there were. JJ ordered Pizzi to train alone, away from the rest of the squad, and the squad rebelled. It all unraveled quickly after that, as the player power within Benfica squad won out once again. It's undefeated at this point. When they want a manager gone, the manager is gone. When a new guy comes in, they play well for a bit, and then stop playing for him as soon as either results go down the drain or one of the influential players in that cartel isn't getting playing time. Pizzi is a player whose name consistently comes up whenever there is an issue in the dressing room. Now he's also a player that really divides Benfiquistas, who a lot of people don't have a lot of time for. Is he consistently brought up during dressing room sort of controversies or arguments between the staff and the players, simply because he's one of the senior players? Or at this point, is there something to it, when people say that his attitude might not be quite up to par?
You know the saying, right? Where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah.
You laid it up for me, bro. It was a layup. Where there's smoke, there's fire. I've actually, as you know, I've worked with the club. I've been around some members of the club, and I still keep in contact. And I've heard this for years now, that there's a little group of players in that locker room that dictate things, and they really set the tone. Whether you want to give Pizzi a benefit of the doubt, that's up to you. It's totally up to you. But I just point to, look at Benfica games since JJ's arrived. Look at his attitude and the way he warms up and the way he goes about his business when he's not in the starting lineup and when he's inserted into the starting lineup. It's a totally different player, different energy. And as your captain, right? He's the second captain. I think Almeida's the first captain. He's one of your captains. You got to bring it week in, week out. And you have to bring it in a positive way, because these guys that are coming in from the outside are looking up to you. Say what you want about Pizzi. I've never been the biggest Pizzi fan, but look, numbers don't lie. When it comes down, Pizzi's going to go down, whether we like it or not. He's going to be in the Benfica Museu. There are very few midfielders, very few players that have as many goals as Pizzi does. for this club. He's got a tremendous amount of cups. He, along with Jardel, Andre Almeida, Rafa, they are the only players in the history of Benfica that have won 4 titles in a row, 4 campeonatos in a row. So these guys have a lot of check marks on their resume, positive things to do. So he carries a lot of weight in that locker room. Now, whether we believe it or not, it's totally up to the individual. We're not in the locker room with these guys. But as you said, anytime any sort of problem pops up, it seems that his name is involved in all this. So, look, I'm a believer. I'm a believer that these guys have too much power in this locker room. And we've now gone from Rui Vitória, who I wasn't a fan of, so I really didn't care, to be brutally honest with you, right? Mm-hmm. Bruno Lage, who, if you guys recall, he took over for Vitória down 7 points, had this tremendous comeback, and they were able to, snip the title from under Porto's nose. Then the very next year, they come off to a tremendous start. They're up 7 or 8 points on Porto, and then Porto did the reverse because the team absolutely went to sleep on this guy in the second half. And that was only after Julian Weigl joined from Dortmund for 20 mil at the time. And the rumor is, again, I can't confirm, this is speculation, right? Pizzi wasn't happy because he was no longer the highest paid player on the team. Julian Weigl was. Pizzi was unhappy because Florentino, who had an important role in the year previous in overturning this deficit, 7-point deficit, and having a lot to do in him and Samaris, I should say. They both had a tremendous, output in the second half of the season to overturn the deficit, and they ultimately came out champions. He was unhappy about it. I mean, you look, that one you could kind of like, okay, he's stepping up for his guys. It's a good leader, right? You want a guy, but you have to be professional at the end of the day. And when you're playing big boy soccer, as I like to say in Benfica podcast, big boy football, right? Some guys are going to be better than you. Some guys are going to make more money than you are. It is what it is. Pull up your pants and go to work every day because that's what you signed up for. So, I don't know, man.
So he was involved there, as you said. He was involved with Rui Vitória. He was involved, or seemingly rumored to be involved, around the time when those managers ultimately got sacked. And then again, there's these rumors coming up now that JJ's gone. But there was a quote from, I think it was Octavio Machado, saying that at Benfica there are rats everywhere, basically at all levels of the club.
Otavio is JJ's spokesperson.
He's his boy.
Remember, that's his boy.
Ignore who it came from saying that. When you think of Benfica and you think of everything that's gone on behind the scenes, is it just simply, like, why do we keep finding ourselves in this situation? Is it just simply that, leadership comes from the top and there just isn't any of that at the club right now?
Leadership, culture. At the end of the day, there's got to be a structure in place that, look, you can't just go around mouthing off and complaining every side. At the end of the day, the coach is the guy that commands the locker room. I pray, and I was shocked when I heard that Pizzi stormed the locker room. And he was basically throwing shade at everybody. And if that is indeed the case, he's absolutely correct in letting them know that they need to concentrate more. They need to invest themselves more. They need to take this seriously. This is big. And apparently he went off on everybody, coaching staff. And Luizão apparently stepped in and said, look, go take a shower, cool off. Talk about this later. Right now is not the time. Not a good performance by Benfica at all. We're lucky it was only 3 because it could have been one of those games you talk about for the rest of your life. The word is that Rui Pedro Braz, who's the sporting director, for lack of a better word, comes in and he says no. He tells the coach, the assistant coach, and Luizão, who's Benfica captain. No player in the history of Benfica has ever won as many titles as Luizão. He's an absolute legend. You talk about legend. You talk about bust going in the Hall of Fame. That is hands down a Benfiquista Hall of Fame. The sporting director tells him, pipe down. Let Pizzi talk. You can't have that. I mean, there's got to be some line of success. There's got to be some structure. Look, and I'm not taking JJ's side at all in this, but I played football and I understand. In the locker room, the coach is the one that says what goes on. You listen to him. Now, the coach got a problem. The GM's got a problem. When you speak outside, and then the coach will come in and implement whatever changes the GM wants to be implemented. But the coaching staff runs the locker room after a terrible defeat like that, in which you're embarrassed. Every time you go into that stadium, you come out of there humiliated. Last thing you want is, and I'm not complaining that Pizzi did it, but the last thing you want is all this ruckus going on in the locker room. Yeah. And so you just want to, cool off, gather your mind, and then we'll talk about this. So when you have a coach coming in there, a GM, a sporting director, and kind of dictating who's speaking and who's not speaking, that takes the authority away from the coaching staff. I think when it comes to stuff like that, it's coaching staff, the masseuses, the therapists, whatever, have those. Everybody else should not be in the locker room, especially after a game like that. So I was shocked because, as you mentioned, every time something happens at Benfica, Pizzi's name seems to be thrown into the fire. So this time I was like, wait a minute, I can't criticize Pizzi because I was embarrassed myself. I probably would have done the same thing. So I'm not criticizing Pizzi. I'm criticizing the other guy for coming in and overstepping a coach. So I don't think that's professional. I don't think that should have happened. And so that's ultimately why we're here speaking today.
And so, we're back at the beginning. Benfica find themselves back in a situation that they are all too familiar with, a situation they would rather not be familiar with. I mean, I'm sick of it, that's for sure. Too many times there's instability within the club, and for me, I'm at the point where I would rather see a clear out and bring in some of the players from Seychelles, Benfica's academy, if there really is a cartel of players within the squad that is consistently causing disruption and ultimately the demise of our managers. Then I want them out. The track record is plain to see at this point, and it's giving the other big clubs in Portugal an easier time as Benfica throw away yet another season. I thank you for watching this video, even if it was a pain to produce, and I want to thank my man Cristiano once again for coming through. Be sure to check out the Benfica podcast and his other social links below. Other than that, a happy, safe new year to you, and have a great day. Ciao.